Right.
And these are the ways that I bridge that gap between the history they give us and the mystery that really created the history that was.
Right. You know, to your point about the naturopathy as a kind of a non-Western modality, you know, there was a time in this country where naturopathy and homeopathy were side by side with allopathy, and once the AMA was instituted, it became a very heavy-duty governing principle, and began to squeeze out the whole. You know, if you go back and you look at Rockefeller used a naturopath. He was in favor of allopathy because he made money off the industrialization of medicine, but privately he had the best naturopaths taking care of him. So
that's right.
There was a fork in the road, really in the 1920s with the rise of industrialization, where the whole Western mindset, which to your point, really becomes aligned with war, because that's the rise of the great war cycles, World War I, World War II, and of course you've got to have the triage stuff. So you've got this background. You're like you're you know, to use a Jamaican parlance, you're similar to an obeah.
I studied obeah. Yeah, I studied. As a matter of fact, I was initiated in obeah in Trinidad. I was buried at 7 years of age because of some special thing. So I had to be buried in the earth overnight by the shore. Went through that, and an obeah man named Friday is the one that I mentored under in the bush itself at a very young age, at 7. I had another Dravidian young man about my age as well. He initiated as well. It was in Trinidad, in the southern part of Trinidad, a place called Mayaro, for the brothers and sisters who are from Trinidad and know the southern part, Mayaro, or they know that area. That's where I was raised.
Mm-hmm. So you're a naturally born medicine man, shaman. And one of the things that a shaman or medicine man or an obeah does is it not only tends to the physical ailments of the community, but also the psychological, spiritual, emotional ailments of the community as well. And I think that when I saw what you were doing with your presentation around Obama and Malcolm X, is that you were tending to people's psyches in a very medicinal fashion. There was something there that you were opening up a clogged artery in some ways in their consciousness. Let's fast forward here. Let's get into that presentation. Where did that take place?
It took place in Baltimore.
In Baltimore. Okay.
It took place in 2 places. I went to Baltimore and the first part, and then I did the second part in New York at the National Black Theater, where I'm going to be at, in fact, next month on the 4th. I'll be there at the same place. Matter of fact, it was a year since I've spoken, and I don't do live lectures anymore. I'm not one to take jobs very easily anymore because there's too much work to do on the other side, hands-on work. And lecturing is good because I've got 185 tapes circling the globe right now from since 1985 when it was on VCH cassettes, and now it's all the way into digital. And I've done enough work, and people have heard enough and seen enough. Now it's time to put the hands on.
Yeah. Well, let's get hands on with this Obama Malcolm X piece. When did you first begin to consider? Let me backtrack a little bit. One of the things that you and I talked about pre-show was that there is a possibility that Obama could be the son of Frank Marshall Davis, or he could be the son of Malcolm X. So you were playing with a host of possibilities. Let's start with that, and then let's go to the Malcolm X / Obama connection. When in your mind did you say something's not right here? I've got to start to untangle some of these knots. When did that happen?
Yeah, that came when I began to study his mother. His mother was working. What I found out was his mother was working with the CIA.
Right.
And as a member of the CIA, I began to wonder. Here you have this one child working with the CIA, and now living and now actually getting a passport to go into Pakistan during the time when Pakistan was not accepting American passports.
And that's Obama. You're talking about Obama getting the passport to go to Pakistan.
Yes, Obama getting the passport,
right.
Exactly. Because they said he went backpacking during that time. And what that seemed to me like was someone who was being trained the same way that young George Bush was being trained himself during the time he was a member of the Hitler Youth to be a spy.
Right.
And the same thing happened again when I looked into it when Obama became a senator and was stopped in Russia. I forgot what the name of the other senator was that was actually held or put under house arrest because they were suspected of being spies or actually relating information to intelligence sources there in Russia.
Wasn't that Dick Lugar? Was that Richard Lugar? Was that him?
I believe it might have been Lugar.
Yeah, I think it was too. Yeah.
And again, my mind has got so many things in it. Please fill in the
That's okay. I'll do my best to backfill for you when I can.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And at that time, when he was stopped and held and detained, they let Lugar go, but they kept him.
Uh-huh.
So, again, these little things began to not make sense. And when they found out that, I started to do and digging and find out that his passport, not his passport, but he had Islamic background and now he's Christian. And it just seemed to me that he was actually being primed and groomed to be an operative of some kind.
Right.
And what that made me do now, to go back into the history of the mother, to try to find out what her leanings were, and I came to find out that she was mostly into socialism. She was a socialist, and she had communist leanings, and that he was raised in that particular circle in Hawaii with Frank Marshall at that time, being mentored at that time by Frank Marshall as well.
Right.
All these little things began to put up my antennas, so I said, well, let me just go ahead and check a few things. And what I did was to look into the fact, and again, all this information was something that everybody else could get. If you took a look at my presentation, I said, this is not something that I'm making up. This is something that you can fish from the internet or from old library sources that I went to, go into the microfiches and pull up the names, certain key names, and you will have these sources here. But then as he became prominent in 2005, I did a very angry lecture called Death March, where I covered what happened to our brothers and sisters during the Katrina disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And there he pops up. And so when he popped up and I saw him, I said, well, wait a minute, here he is again. Who is this man from out of Chicago dealing with Chicago politics? Who is this man who was raised by his mother as a socialist and a pseudo-Christian / pseudo-Islamic? Who is this man who was mentored by one of the Weather Underground?
Right.
Members of the Weather Underground, and he was actually given his first political, banquet by these two ex-members of the Weather Underground. Now, who is this man that people were putting money out for him? Who was this man that a sheikh who was the advisor to the Grand Sheikh over there in Saudi Arabia, the economic advisor to the Grand Sheikh, gives him a plus, gives him a leg up, gives him a good a recommendation to get to Harvard.
Yeah, he put him through Harvard.
Yeah. Who is this man that is being given all of this, these little perks to be? I said, this is the way you nurture somebody when you're about to give them a high political office, or at least a semblance of a high political office. And what you're doing is grooming them for the public. And he was an exceptional orator. And they groomed him as an exceptional orator, but they groomed him in such a way that he had to consistently read. He could read well,
mm-hmm.
but he's not very good at, he's very coached. Obama is extremely coached. And a lot of people don't see that because he does it so well. but he does not go anywhere without his teleprompter. And if he is already, with his one-to-one, he already has his people seated in the audience for them to ask the right questions to be able to stay on point. But I'm saying all of that, family, to tell you that there was something suspicious about all of that, the same way I did the dig-in on George W. Bush, whose name was Scherf. George Scherf.
Yes, George Scherf, exactly, yeah.
Right. Now, this is not my own sole research. I research into places where a lot of people were never researching before. It's not like they're not doing that now.
Right.
I've seen a lot of young brothers and sisters now getting into those places where I had a lot of access to, but nobody did. So it seemed like I had something that nobody else could get access to, but I never did that when I went live. I always told everyone, look at it for yourself. It's out there. You have to become more attentive to what's around you and what they place in front of you.
By the way, if people want to find out more about the George Bush, George Scherf connection, Don Nikoloff up in Idaho has done stellar research on that as well. So just want to throw that out to folks. So you come to these realizations. Now, when does the Malcolm light bulb go off in your head?
Well, I saw a picture of him, and if you looked at the picture I saw of him when he was a young senator, I saw Malcolm's face. And it was interesting because it was my wife that said, wow, he looks like Malcolm. Mm-hmm. And I said, whoa, you're right, he does look like Malcolm. And somebody else now put the two together and said the whole family looks like Ahkenaten's family.
Right.
Very interesting how they played that card. But when I saw that, I said, I wonder if there's a connection because we have different facial features that are unique to every family as far as peoples of African descent. But there are different characteristics, facial characteristics that are unmistakable. And I saw in his daughter more of Malcolm than I saw in his face. So I say, well, maybe it skips a generation. So I went to dig a little bit. And I am also an artist, a graphic artist. So I began to play with the images of Malcolm. And I did something that I don't think that anybody else has done, even though they had researched the information relative to him being also a son or a offspring of Malcolm. I began to forensically put the pieces together, especially the size of the lips, the place where the Venus curve is, all of that, and began to match them to see what they might look like. And I was astounded at how similar Malcolm's features were to his. And not only that, not only Malcolm's features to his, but Malcolm's to his daughter, which was fascinating. So I began to just play with it. Also, remember, I never said this is what was really happening and that he was a son of Malcolm. I said, take a look at the forensic evidence and judge for yourself. This is just something I thought I saw. I saw my wife, and it's not something like myself that just saw it. My wife saw it, too. And she said, wow, he looks like Malcolm. And somebody else thought he looked like Malcolm. And then I said, well, there must be something there. So I just followed my nose. It was nothing really great. As far as research is concerned, it's about just sweating out the boring details, getting to all the little things until you find that kernel. It's like mining for gold. 90% of the time it's just you sifting through dirt.
Yeah.
Every now and then a nugget comes up, and that's what research truly is about, finding that nugget. And so what I did was I looked up and found a whole bunch of nuggets, and was just enough to put the little pieces together to put on the show, like you said, that I did in Baltimore.
Now, talk about the importance of the Venus cleft, because this comes back a lot during your lecture. How rare and uncommon is it to have the exact same Venus cleft in almost the exact same position, the same iteration of that? Talk about the anomaly that exists with the Venus cleft.
That is very rare. It's very rare to get the cleft to be exactly like that. And every now and then there is a mixture of the mother and the father between that. So you begin to look at his mother as well, and you begin to look for that same indentation and cleft. And if you try to look for it in the father that they said was there, Obama Sr., you would find it was not there. But in Malcolm, it was.